Okay, my name's Don McComber, and I come from Scott, Ohio. It's a town about halfway between Lima and Fort Wayne. I was born in the same house I live in right now. No, I enlisted. I joined the cadets, and I got a year's college at Kent State University. And I went down to San Antonio, and you had to pick which branch you'd like to be. And I knew they need bombardier, so I picked bombardier. Well, that was a mistake. When I took the test, I got the highest in navigation, the next in pilot, and the lowest in bombardier. Out I went. They washed me out. So then I went to Sioux Falls for radio school, and then to Yuma, Arizona for gunnery, and we had a transition to Avon Park, Florida. Met the rest of the crew and everything. You know, they did a lot of things like the intricate part of it, and boy, they didn't even give you a screwdriver or anything in the plane. You couldn't have fixed anything if you wanted to, but we went into it real deep in radio school. So. Well, we went to Savannah, Georgia, and got a brand new plane, and we flew up to Fort Dix, New Jersey to stop, and then to Gander, Newfoundland, and we left for overseas. And went through the Azore Island, Marrakesh, and
how many planes left from Newfoundland to the Azores when you left?
Well, there was just 2 or 3, I think, not very many. So.
And how long did you stay at the Azores?
Just overnight, yeah.
And from there you went to
Marrakesh in Morocco.
For an overnight?
Overnight, all, yeah.
And then did you go to Tunis?
Huh?
Did you go to Tunis?
Yeah, I went to Tunis, yeah. After that.
And from there to Foggia?
Then, well, we went up to a place where they took the plane and they put it in a orchard or something like that, a brand new plane. You know, we couldn't get a new plane to save our neck, and you know, I suppose after the war they just cut them up. I don't know, but it was new. At 10 hours when we got it. Everything worked.
So then your crew, after you left that plane, then you were just trucked over or rail over to
We
Foggia?
flew over. They come up, somebody from Foggia come up and picked us up, another crew.
Mm-hmm.
And when was that, Don?
That was in probably November of '44. But, well, there was 2 crews of us went, and we were, you know, they had a bulletin board tell who was flying the next day. We were on that, and the next morning they didn't call us at all. We had 2 guys get drunk on the crew, and they talked the doctor out of not flying the next day. They called another crew, and they got shot down on their first mission in our place. That always kind of bothers me, because we should have been there, and they called this other crew and they got shot down. But one guy in this crew got out, and him and the radio operator was in the back, and he said, "You better help the ball turret gunner get out." So he jumped, and this other guy went back, and about the time he jumped, the plane exploded, and all the guys got killed. So this guy went back to help the ball turret gunner, but he didn't get out. But this guy, he was a flight engineer, and he got, after the war, he got back and he told us what happened. Well, in a tent that wasn't good at all.
And the weather conditions in November?
It was a little bit short. I tell you, it was a lot like northern Florida. One guy said he saw some snow there, but I never saw it. Frosted and things like that, but it was cold. We had to have heat when we got there. So.
What was your heat source?
100 octane gas. that they had a tank outside and a tube into it and let it drip out on a barrel, and that heated the tent pretty good, really. And we could cook stuff. It was on top of a barrel, and we could cook stuff on top of that too.
What type of things were you able to find to cook in there?
Well, once in a while you'd bring stuff from the mess hall or something like that, or maybe go into town. You know, you could buy things into town.
How many times did you actually go into town?
Probably only a couple of times, something like that. There wasn't anything in town. Foggia was real small, you know. And I remember we went in there one time and they had free ice cream, but they had a line about a block long, you know, and so we got free ice cream out of that.
And that was being distributed by the American Army, or?
I don't know who was, maybe the Red Cross or something was running that. They send a laundry in there, you know, and so those people that swipe some of the laundry, and everybody was wearing GI clothes and things like that. So, well, really, one guy had a coded message, and when you dropped the bombs, he sent this message back, and the rest of us was supposed to keep silent, you know, listen, or monitor the frequency, but not do anything on that.
Oh.
Yeah, I think I had to call back Morse code, you know, back when say we was having trouble or something like that.
Back to the base, or
Back to the base. Yeah.
Right.
I had a gun in the top, up to the top.
And did you ever shoot that?
No, I didn't. Well, I went over there late, and the fighters were the only time you had trouble with fighters if you were blind or something like that. But I never saw any fighter. Well, I did see fighters go over, but they never come in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you monitor that frequency, and you know, I had a wooden desk, but it had so many holes in it that I had no place to write. So your pencil would drop through, your pen would drop through. So you have to write over to the edge, you know, so it wouldn't drop through. But it was all shot up.
That was one thing the grounds crewmen never fixed.
Oh, they wouldn't fix that. No. They could care less about that.
Some of the planes, I understand, had a camera mounted in the floor. And my understanding is that it was located in the radio room.
Yes, that's right.
Now, did you have to do anything with
Yes,
that?
I had to do that a couple of times. The story I wanted to tell about the nickels, I mean, that, you want me to tell that?
Sure.
Well, at the end of the war, they had what we call nickels. I don't know where they got the name, but it was in German, and it was telling the Germans that they were losing the war and that to give up. And we had to spread these out, you know. I asked another radio operator, what do you do with the nickels? He said, it was in packages. He says, I tear the end of them, throw them down in the bomb bay. Well, that sounds good enough for me. So before we ever left, I'm going over to the target, I put them down in the bomb bay. And about 20 minutes from the target, we had a different pilot that day. He had maybe 30 missions, and he didn't want to lose them. And he says, where's the nickels at? And I said, they're in the bomb bay, sir. He says, let's get them the hell out of there. So I got on the catwalk, and it was a long ways down to the bomb bay doors, you know. But I threw them back into the radio room, and I had a pile just about this deep in the radio room. And we went on to the target, and then coming back, I wondered how I was going to get rid of them. So I opened underneath in the camera well, and that was a mistake, because the wind from the camera well blew those things all over the radio room. They were about 4 inches thick all the way around. And I didn't know how I was going to get them out, but we went across Yugoslavia, and I tossed these out about a handful at a time. Across the Adriatic Sea, I kept talking and tossing them out. And just before we landed at Foggia, I got rid of all of them. But nobody ever said anything about it. But the Germans didn't get many of them, I don't think. So.
Well, did you operate the camera then? Was that
Yeah, and I did a couple times on bomb drops. Yeah.
How did you know when? Did you actually snap the photographs yourself?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And did someone tell you when?
Well, I don't remember. I think they did. You had to take out a piece of the floor, and there was a camera well, and then take pictures as bombs were going down. Yeah. Well, you were kind of rested, really, and relaxed a little bit. Till you got back there, and then the Red Cross, had coffee and donuts, which was a good thing, and then had kind of debriefing or something like that. They talked to you.
I was told they gave you a shot of whiskey before the debriefing.
Well, I don't remember that. We had donuts, but they tasted pretty good, I tell you. I don't remember whiskey, though.
Now, once you got back to base, did you have to do anything with the camera, or did somebody else?
Somebody else did that.
Took
Yeah,
that.
we didn't have to touch it. Well, the radio operator had a trailing wire that it was 300 feet, and most of it was by tubes. You set the radio, but the trailing wire antenna, you could get a frequency a lot clearer and everything. It was better than the tubes was, as far as getting it tuning in and everything. So you run it out there till you got a good signal and use that.
Then you had to crank it back up after you were done deploying it, or what?
No, you could push this lever and it rolled on a thing. But I don't know why it didn't go out. They were supposed to go out a hole, but it unwound in the waist. What a mess. We had a trailing wire antenna. It was 300 feet, copper wire. And when it was cold, all the gunners come in the radio room to sleep, because they had doors on both sides and it was a lot warmer. And all of them was in there. And this trailing wire antenna was on a switch on the panel on the back of the radio room. And somebody must have bumped it. But I opened the door, and it didn't go outside. It unrolled in the waist. There was 300 feet of wire in the waist. So I went back there and hacked it off and left about this much on, threw it out the door. So somebody in Florida got about 300 feet of copper wire, either that or went down the swamp or something. But it'd be worth a lot today, copper wire. But there was 300 feet I threw out. On our first mission, we went extra people, and you were supposed to, if anybody had trouble, then you were supposed to take their place. Otherwise, you went back to base. But I was listening to music from the BBC. Boy, they had good music on there on the radio. And all at once the navigator come on and said, "You're 20 minutes from the target. Get your flak suit on." And we was going on the target, and I thought we was going back home. So that was the first mission. Yeah.
Your flak suit consisted of what equipment?
Well, it was kind of a vest that you put on real heavy, and it had different, overlapping things that on the flak suit. But you never put it on until you got near the target. They would duck towns, when you're going to the target. Why you'd miss towns, but on the one to the target, you had to go straight for so many minutes so the bombardier could get a good shot of it. So and the Germans knew that, and that's when they sent the flak up and everything. Well, I had 8.
8?
So,
And
and I talked to a guy here, He went over, he was there at the same time, and he had 22. I don't know how he got so many, but we didn't get that many.
And the reason you finished at 8 was for what?
End of the war.
Oh, the war.
Oh.
Well,
Okay.
they bombed northern Italy, took up frag bombs, and the flight engineer and the pilot went on those missions. And they were supposed to be secret, they didn't want anybody to know. And we didn't go. There's only 2 guys in the crew that went there. And they flew about every day for a week up to northern Italy with frag bombs. They moved us to Memphis, or to Naples. And they took all the guns out and put planks along the side, and we hauled passengers down to Casablanca, infantry guys. And they could be home in 2 days when we hauled them down there. And otherwise, if they went by boat, it was about 10 or 12 days, something like that. But they got home quick. But they were scared to death to fly on airplanes. Most of them sweat had just run off of them, they were scared. They'd been in a lot of combat, and they didn't want to go down in an old junker plane that going back home. And that was kind of the trouble. We had a lot of good mechanics, but they had a lot of points. So when we went to Naples, we were slow timing engines, and we took off, and the cowling went off of one of the engines and hit the tail, put a big ding on it. But they had anybody that was fixing motors, they didn't have any qualifications at all. And so we had to return. When you looked out there, it didn't have any cowling on one engine. One that started at Normandy, and he was a forward observer on artillery. He got up in the church towers and seen where it was dropping, and it took, 3 years or something like that from Normandy clear to Berlin, and he never got a scratch. And I had one that was in the Navy. We didn't talk too much about him, but they used to tell him, Navy flyers, they just followed the railroads. They didn't know where they was going anyway. But he ended up in blimps in New Jersey. I looked across in the mess hall one time and saw a guy he lived about 8 or 9 miles from us. So we got together, and our girlfriends all come up to visit us. This was at Sioux Falls. Mm-hmm. Really, we stayed as a crew, and we didn't associate much with other people. That's why I don't know names and things like that.
Sure.
But we just kind of lived as a family in the tent. We have pilots in Fairbanks, Alaska, and he was supposed to be here. Still flies yet. He's 95. And he's got his own plane, and he's got a hunting lodge, and he flies out to that about once a week, something like that. And he's a good pilot. Well, he was flying before he ever went into service, so he was a bush pilot for a while up there. I don't know why. Said he was my daughter called him, and I think he was out to his camp, and he was snowed in and couldn't get out. That's the reason he's not here this time. You wouldn't think they had snow this early, but I guess do. So.